Well, folks, opening day is tomorrow, and it'll be Henry Davis's first full campaign as the starting catcher of the Pittsburgh Pirates. We're joined by the Fort, Michael McKenry, to talk about all of it on today's episode of Locked On Pirates.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back, everybody, to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates every day. My name is Ethan Smith, coming at you for the second time today. Yeah, I know we already had a show today, but guess what? We're going to have another one. Why not? Because when Michael McKenry picks up the phone and says, yeah, I'd love to be on your show. Yeah, you bring the Fort on the show whenever he wants to be on the show, folks. I told you I had a special guest coming your way for opening day week. I can let these out now because my cat is not in the vicinity, so she won't attack me mid-show. But again, as you guys can all clearly tell, we are joined today by the Fort, Michael McKenry. Michael, how are you feeling with opening day? Not even, it's about 27 hours away now at the time of recording. I was going to say not even a day away, but technically a little bit over a day away.
Well, first off, thanks for having me. I feel like this is long overdue, and I appreciate you asking. And I kind of hope the cat comes back around you and starts, getting after those strings. Yeah, it's a really cute cat. What's the cat's name?
Her name is Melly, so we shorten it as Melly, which is very funny because when my mom was growing up, that was actually one of her nicknames. With her name,
so you named
Melanie.
A cat after your mom? How's she feel about that?
Inadvertently.
Oh yeah,
but
I'm sure.
She feels great about it. She loves. I think she likes the cat more than I do. And a lot of things that we like going into this season. A lot of things to like about this Pirates team. We'll get into those a little bit later. But I wanted to highlight Henry Davis on this show. I've talked about Henry Davis a ton on this show throughout the offseason, obviously with the news that Endy Rodriguez was going to probably be out for the entirety of the 2024 season. Kind of thrust Henry Davis into that starting catching role really almost just by proxy because of where he was at the time. You obviously see them bring in Yasmani Grandal. Jason DeLay will back him up to start the season with Grandal starting on the IL. But I thought this was a great time to really talk about Henry Davis entering 2024 as a full-time catcher, seeing his last year when he was up here, he only caught 2 innings, was playing a lot of right field last year. Now he shifts into the role that he was drafted as a catcher, number 1 overall out of Louisville. So what are your thoughts really for him and what you expect from him going into his first full campaign as a starting catcher this year?
You've heard the old adage, if it walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. Henry Davis is a catcher. He's always been a catcher. He wanted to catch. That's the first thing I always ask guys, whether it's at a professional level, a guy transitioning into that role, at a youth level, I say, do you want to catch? If they hesitate, just a slight hesitation, I honestly don't believe they want to do it because you have to buy in. You have to buy in with everything you have or you're not going to be good at it. This man buys into everything he believes in wholeheartedly. His nutrition, the water he drinks, the way he walks, his mobility, everything he does has a purpose, has intention. To an nth degree, you probably don't want to understand. The guy he looks up to is Brady. He doesn't have that same personality on camera, but he does have that mentality that I want to be the best and I want to kill you when I'm out there. And that's what we need behind the plate. I think he's perfect for the position. I think, the opportunity to get back there. I think last year he just hit his way out of the position and they needed the offense. So they brought him up quick and it was a huge win for Sherrington, right? You get your 1-1 up into the big leagues. He started out well. He's learning position. His personality doesn't fit well with maybe that because he wants to be the best. If he picks up a violin and says, I'm going to be a violin player, it's not to play as a hobby. It's to be the best violin player. He wants to be Mozart. He wants to be Beethoven when he does those things. So I'm excited, man. I'm absolutely stoked to see his growth. I think we often forget he hasn't even caught 100 games in the minor leagues. And this guy's going to go out and probably catch 120 games this year, if not more. If it's up to him, he'll catch 162. So it's going to be exciting. I think he's had tremendous progress. He really went all in this offseason, was in Bradenton almost the entire offseason with the drive line, did some stuff. I think he did a great job kind of messing around with the angles of his approach with the swing. He changed his original bat barrel. It's more vertical to start with, which helps him get in the zone better. I think that's going to help his hand. And the guys love throwing to him. And I think that's a testament to him spending a ton of time learning those guys, catching those guys. And honestly, I think Grandal's signing, and I got this from Mike Ribello, the third base coach, who was also the catching coach. He said Grandal's already made his money by what he's been able to teach Henry and DeLay and the coaching staff. This guy is very cerebral, and he prepares as good or better than anybody in the league. It's something I took a lot of pride in, and it's something I got a call on from California. Said, hey, this dude is next level when it comes to preparing. He sees game HD, and I'm like, so we're going to get along. The guy was like, yeah, you guys will get along. I haven't had a chance to catch up with him, but I think that was a great sign. I didn't understand it at the time, as I'm sure you didn't, because you want to give your guys a chance. DeLay is probably one of the best backups in baseball when it comes to defense, and I think he handles the bat well enough to be a great compliment for Henry. But I want to throw this out there for you, Ethan. I've been long-winded on this. Is think about moving forward. You're talking about maybe one of the best possible offensive threats behind the plate in the National League, at least in Henry Davis this year. Now we can get Indy to go back to who he was prior to last year, where he bought all in on catching. I think both guys learned a lot from that. I think the organization learned from that. You know, Indy got exposed, he hurt his arm. Now he can go back to that hybrid role where, you know, he can play a little bit of outfield, because this kid's really athletic. He can run. Yeah, he's different than Henry. He's not stocky. Henry's built like a linebacker like me. He's a little bit bigger, but we don't look natural in the outfield, right?
Yeah.
Indy does, and he looked natural at second base. He also has a lot of time at first base, and that's where he was one of the best players in minor league baseball. So I think him getting that chance is going to get him back on the field quicker, because, I mean, he's already, you know, moving around. I'm pretty sure he's really close to starting his throwing program and swinging. When that happens, he technically can get to AAA and start getting at bats. So that means he can start to develop, start moving around. It's a lot harder to get back behind the plate. So a lot of positives and maybe a negative gut punch that happened this offseason. And honestly, I think a lot of times we don't look at those things properly. This is an opportunity to make our team way better for a long time, because that kid needed to be behind the plate from day one. It's just the circumstance shifted. He's a yes man. I'll do anything for my team. So he did. Now he's back home where he belongs.
Yeah, and I agree 100%. I mean, you looked at Henry in the outfield last year, and you could really tell that he just wasn't ever really truly comfortable out there.
Nobody should learn how to play position in the big leagues.
No, and I also agreed with that as well. That's what I was saying the whole time, is a lot of people were saying, why was Henry Davis struggling at the plate? I thought his calling card was hitting and all this. Well, you have to keep in mind that all the things that were going in his head last year, I mean, you're trying to learn a new position that you really haven't played all that much. You're just now making your debut as a Major League Baseball player. So you're already
minimal games and everything else. Yeah. And I think what isn't talked about enough, and I could say this about Peguero, Alika Williams, a lot of guys, when you're trying to hold on to that roster spot in the big leagues, there's a lot more that goes into it. So then you think about Peguero moving around. There's a mental side to that. It's an absolute grind, because you don't know where you stand. You know, you could go out and hit 9,000 and you get sent down. And if they don't tell you why, which I think our guys do a really good job of being pretty transparent, you're confused and you maybe try to do more. I know it hurt my career by trying to do more, and I didn't need to. I just need to be who I was, but nobody told me. And that's what Henry's doing last year. Like, he was hearing it from every direction that you can't catch, you can't play right field, and you're not hitting. And he's a guy that is incredibly smart. He breaks it down as good as anybody when it comes to the game plan and his understanding of what the pitcher's going to throw. I think sometimes so much so that it hurts him. And I think he had so much time that he had never had before. Because when you're catching, you can serve the guy out in front of you. So you can kind of combat all those little demons that are inside of you saying, oh, you should have been looking for this. Maybe he'll throw me this next time. And you just overthink everything. And that's what happened last year. Had a great conversation with him. And it seems like being able to shift his focus and his mindset out to the mound is really going to help him, you know, maybe 1,000% be better at the plate.
Yeah, and I really am truthfully hoping that you look at what Henry was drafted for. The kid's going to hit. He's going to hit. And for a lot of people to the naked eye, you hear questions about his defense. You hear all these things that he can't catch, he can't do this.
But nobody could nobody could quantify what that meant. Like
Yeah, and that was the
I
issue.
called people nationally, and I heard different reviews. Like, it was such a mixed bag, and it was like, what's the problem? I understand it now. I see that, but it was all development. Like, you could fix all those problems, especially with
Yep.
a kid like him. And that's what was confusing. But then understanding how good he was in Double-A last year, with the MLB matrix I get to see in the Pirates matrix, like, he was so advanced in that league. They felt like, hey, we got to get this guy up because he's outshining this league like we've never seen before. I mean, better than, some of the biggest names in baseball because of, his walk rate, his ability to, not swing and miss inside the zone. It was really, really cool to learn that stuff this spring.
Yeah. And again, I've seen nothing but improvements from Henry from what we saw in spring. I mean, he just was blasting the baseball. I think somebody said that he had the most like the best line drive contact of pretty much anybody in the Cactus League down there, or not the Cactus League, the Grapefruit League in Florida. And you look at spring overall, Michael, to shift away from just Henry Davis. And I kept saying it on this show, and people have said, well, it's just spring training. Pirates led all of baseball in home runs in spring training. And this team, you look at it top down from what they're starting with on opening day, and you're looking at a real roster that has real power on this team. You're looking at O'Neal Cruz coming back. Jack Sawinski hit 26 homers last year. Reynolds is always going to probably hit 20 plus. Ke'Bryan Hayes had that really strong second half, and it appears that a lot of that was not a fluke at all. And it looks like a lot of this stuff was for real that he was doing in the final months. So what were some of your thoughts from watching the team at spring, and what are some things you think that they did in spring that are going to carry over to the major league level?
I have to say it. Last year, everybody was burying, their approach at the plate. And I think what we're seeing is a product of an entire offseason, an entire team bought into their personal plan. And I think we're going to see some loud noises this year. I don't think that was a fluke this spring. They were also working on things. Guys knew that they were going to make the team. That's a big difference. But I mean, just to mention the names you just said, right? All those guys are probably going to hit 20 homers. That's 5 guys with 20 homers. Now, Talese has hit 30. Kutch will hit 20 if he's healthy. I promise that. And then Triolo can sneak in 20, possibly. I think he's going to be more DJ LeMahieu offensively in Colorado, not in New York, because the way our field's built. But you're talking about 7 to 9 guys that could pop double-digit homers, if not more. And then if Peggy comes up, he's going to hit double-digit homers. Nick Gonzalez has a chance to hit double-digit homers with 200-300 at-bats. So, yeah, we're going to be very powerful, but I also think we're going to be a more balanced lineup than we've ever been because guys understand who they are, their identity, their roles. Alika knows why he's there. DeLay knows why he's there. It's a balance. There's going to be rotation in and out of the minor leagues with the pitching and everything, but it's going to be all familiar faces. It's not going to be, grabbing at straws at times that it was over the last couple of years because we didn't have the depth we have now. I mean, you think about how good that AAA team's going to be.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about top prospects that are going to have a hard time finding the field. And I played on my last year on Tampa Bay's 2017 team that ended up, most of those guys ended up making it to the World Series. We were so talented that they had to call guys up to get them innings and get them right back down. It was just a revolving door. I mean, we had Blake Snell. It was unbelievable how good we were. And that's what I see with the Pirates right now. I mean, it's that good in AAA. I think the pitching staff in AA is that good, if not maybe even on par with AAA.
Yeah.
It's crazy, dude, because every dude that comes up has a chance to enhance our team, right? Especially pitching wise. And I still think Peggy has an incredible upside. And even if they don't come up, right, Tamar just goes bonkers because I think he's the best prospect infield wise, maybe in baseball, honestly.
Yeah, he's up there.
And I think he may be in the big leagues this year, in my opinion. I'm very adamant about that. If he's not, it's because he got hurt or, we're playing that well. So it's going to be really, really interesting because the pieces are really fitting. Now it's, let's just not mess it up.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned a lot of these pieces, and one of the bigger questions that I think a lot of us had leaving spring training before this opening day roster was announced was pitching. What was the pitching going to look like? You had Rowanzi, you had Luis Ortiz, you had Quinn Priester all involved in that big back end rotation battle. And then obviously Bailey Falter still inserts himself there as the fourth or fifth starter. But Jared Jones made this roster. He went out there this spring, he fired 16 scoreless innings, and he made this roster. First time this century that's happened for a guy to just flat out make the roster out of spring as a starting pitcher. And it doesn't happen all that often. And you mentioned how deep this team is getting. I just mentioned Quinn Priester, Luis Ortiz, Rowanzi, Jared Jones, not even mentioning the number one overall prospect in Paul Skeens and starting the season in AAA, which I think is a clear sign that he's going to be up here a lot quicker than people expect. So moving over to the pitching side of things, even with some of the IL starts that we have to start the year with Holderman and Majinski in the bullpen, this group of pitchers still doesn't feel as if it's the major deficit that a lot of people would try to make it out to be.
Yeah, I like the 1-2 punch in Keller and Perez. Falter surprised me. Don't be surprised to see him open. I think he, in that role, is much, much better, and it makes more sense. I thought Ortiz maybe slipped his way into that role, that fifth starter role. So don't be surprised to see maybe that combo come together. It'd be a really good complement with the two. So we'll see how that turns out. And I think Gonzalez can be exactly what we expect him to be. He's going to be a guy that he's going to give you a bunch of quality starts. He's going to take his lumps every now and then when his release point's off, or he's not, locating the way he can because he has to locate. But his stuff has ticked up. It has gotten better. I think in spring, some of the issues were he was throwing a mile or two and out. I think it was 2 miles an hour harder on average on some of his pitches. And that's sometimes you just throw through your stuff. And I think he realized that, watched his last bullpen. It looked absolutely outstanding. Jermaine, or however you say it, he looked awesome. And then obviously we have those young kids that are, right there. I mean, it is very interesting. And you look at Lauer too. Brault loves him and thinks he has a chance. I love the deception. And I think if he doesn't get into that starting rotation, he's a great bullpen
100%
depth guy. So yeah, I really like where we're at, the signings in the minor leagues and how that's shifted since this regime came in. They're spending more money down there. They're getting better prospects. The fact we have Jake Lamb, who literally could carry a team for 2 weeks. He hasn't been able to sustain it, obviously, since he's been an all-star, but he's a guy that could come up and, make some loud noise, pretty quickly. And maybe he falls off, maybe he doesn't, but say it does work. And that's the cool part about where we're at. And all those guys become assets.
Yeah.
When we need to go out and get something or a piece. And I think that's what they've done. They've set this up really, really well. I know they've been trying to trade over the last 6 months for a controllable starter. And it's going to be very interesting because I don't think anything they do this year is going to be just the thought of like, hey, we're going to win now. They're also going to think about, we want to win down the road. So we may see more signings. We may see some things come together over the next couple of weeks, similar to last year. Expect a lot of good news over the next 6 months. And then when time comes, we have money. They did a really good job and they have money left over to spend, even though they signed Chapman and those guys, Keller, they did a tremendous job. I mean, the fact that they didn't sign Keller with a big lump of a signing bonus says, now we're saving some nest egg here. We're gonna continue. That's a good sign.
Yeah, and I think that's been a good sign that you mentioned the extension of Keller. That was probably one of the bigger things that happened.
Who do you want to be next?
Who do I want to be next?
Yeah,
it's tough because I think the top three has to be Skeens, Johnson, and Cruz. And I mentioned Johnson in there because I think a lot.
Why'd you skip Bednar?
Bednar can be there too. Yeah.
I got Bednar, Triolo.
Bednar, Triolo is a good shout. Those are good shouts. You probably just gave me a good episode idea for next week.
There you go. You're welcome. I'll get my agent to call you.
Yeah. You'd be like, hey, wait, hold on. He has to be back over here in a minute. But yeah, Bednar, Triolo, I'd say Skeens, Johnson, Cruz, obviously. I think the Johnson and Skeens ones come a lot from what we saw in the division with Jackson Chorio and Milwaukee, getting those guys locked up would be phenomenal for this team and its long-term development. And you mentioned the long-term with this team, and I think that's the real kind of down the road thing that I'm seeing is you hear people say, like, I predicted this team to make the playoffs this year as the final wild card team. I'm saying that with saying that I think 2025 is going to be a better year than this year when you're going to get Johan Oviedo back and Endy Rodriguez back. Skeens will be a full-time MLB player. Jones will be a full-time MLB player. And that's not even counting those acquisitions you said that the front office has been making lately to make this team deeper, to make it better. So say a guy goes down, you have one of those assets to come up and show their stuff, and that drop-off doesn't feel all that bad. Perfect example of that from last year was Triolo coming up when Ke'Bryan Hayes got injured for that short stint. He showed us what he could do. He hit 298 last year. He put back the ball. He showed Gold Glove level defense at third base. Now he can play pretty much anywhere in the infield that he wants to. I really wanted them to slide over to first in a platoon with Tellez, but it feels like they might do that a little bit more with Connor Joe. But they have all these options now, Michael. I think that's what you keep shouting about is that they have options everywhere. Like, it's not just like they don't have options here. They don't have options here. They have options pretty much all around the diamond at this point.
It's more predictable.
Yeah.
When you look at it, like when you think about Vegas, right? Like their odds don't make any sense because just on paper, starting this year, we're better, even with our bullpen kind of beat up. And it will get enhanced. Well, also our division is taking some big lumps. I mean, another guy with the Reds just went down, and it's kind of looking at it and say, okay, if we can stay healthy and if good news can continue, you know, I don't think it's a coincidence. Last year, Reynolds signs and we have a huge April, right? Like things happen. And I think continuing to do that, maybe it's even Jack Sawinski. I think that'd be an incredible dude to lock up because the person he is. I'm a big believer in betting on the person. O'Neal Cruz would actually probably be last for me, believe it or not. And not because he doesn't show every potential in the world. It's just that he's an avatar. I can look at Jack Sawinski and give him a comp, understand what he could be, understand his floor. I don't think Cruz has a floor or a ceiling. So it's like, we have no clue. It's like Stanton and Judge, right? Nobody in America wants to pay Stanton right now.
No.
Everybody wants to pay Judge, but those guys don't stay on the field. Those are freaks. Stanton deserved what he got paid, but it's hard to understand what he could be and can be. I do think being comfortable, something it seems like I see in him. So when the time comes and he proves, hey, I'm here, I'm going to stay healthy, I can do this, I think he'll actually take, unless he has a weird agent, less to be comfortable because he's very similar to Brian Reynolds. He's going to want to be somewhere where he feels comfortable for as many years that he can. He'll take the years over the dollars, and that's exactly what Reynolds did. So Jack Sawinski, same way. And I think that's a benefit if we can get that 5-6 guys, which has never happened in Pittsburgh since probably the 90s, I would assume. That would change the culture here because every year you'd have guys coming back to do this, the one thing we wanted to do in 13, and let's get to the World Series and win. And that's what Atlanta's doing. That's what the best teams are doing. They're building a young core that has sustainability that start to come together like a team because this game has gotten so individualized, the team aspect's dying. And, you know, you look at alumni with the Pittsburgh Pirates over the last 2 decades, it's hard to find guys that have played in a Pirates uniform more than 3 years.
Yeah.
You know, like Jack Wilson brought that up to me recently. And I was like, oh man, like I didn't think about that. I played 3 years and then I started going through my teammates and like, there's not many, you know, and it's crazy. And then some of the guys that did like Russell Martin and guys like that, they're going to Toronto, right? Grilly's here, but he does more stuff in Toronto and Atlanta. And it's just kind of looking at it as like, we need our guys. We need to have those Mike LaValliers, the Manny Sanguians, the guys that were staple, Bob Walks and Rock, that when you think about Pirates, you think about them.
Yeah, and it's almost like I always use the old adage of you want the promotional schedule and like the promo book every year to have the same guys on the promo schedule every year.
No doubt.
You just want to move it around a little bit.
No doubt. And it's going to be good and bad, right?
Yeah.
Like Jack Swinski's going to have a month where he hits 180 and everybody's going to be like, oh, he stinks. No, he's done this every year. Last year was better than the year before. He still hit 26 homers, led our team again. And the only other person in the Pirates uniform's ever done this is Barry Bonds and Willie Stargell. So let's not forget that. But we can grow with them. And I think Keller's the best example of that. Bednar's the best example of that. It's like, let him go out and figure it out. Bednar didn't fail as much as Keller did, but if you can understand the time that it takes sometimes guys to figure it out, and we bet on the human being, you literally can build a team that will be unstoppable in this league. It doesn't matter how much money you have.
Yeah, and it's a very tight-knit team, and that has changed the dynamic a lot from the last 3 off seasons, locking up Hayes, locking up Reynolds, locking up Keller this offseason. And they go into opening day against Miami tomorrow. This is coming up obviously later today. 4:10 Eastern time, Miami Marlins firing 4 lefties out there against us to start the season. Very fun. Have Peter Pratt of Locked On Marlins on the show tomorrow for everybody. What are your thoughts going into this first series? Maybe even, first road trip, considering they're going to be in Miami for 4 games and Washington for 3 before they return to the North Shore next week. How do you think they start this season for it? How are we feeling about how the Pirates go into this first 7 games of the year?
I'd love to see 2 series wins. I would even take a split in Miami. They're an underrated team. They're very tight knit. And we're going to have our hands full. I feel much better going into Washington, especially the matchup when it comes to offensively. So yeah, I think if we can leave there 3 out of 4 would be great, but I would take a split and then go to Washington, take care of business, win that series, get home, and do everything we can to make loud noise against that Orioles team. And I think that would make a statement. I think we made a loud statement in spring training. They could not talk about the Pirates,
Yeah.
And I think that's the continued approach is like, we're going to be quietly loud all through April. And that drum beat hopefully just gets louder and louder. And then we make a huge, almost atomic bomb when Skeens comes up. And then I think we're going to see other guys come up this year. Like there's a lot of good MLB close or even ready guys. I thought Honeywell was going to make the bullpen, and he's going to be up here really quick at some point because the guy's stuff plays. I thought it played better than some of the guys that are in the bullpen. I like that they're giving guys chances, but you're going to see a revolving door of dudes that have stuff. And that's why Jones made that team. Going back to him, we didn't really talk much about it. It's like that dude made the team because his stuff plays. He outstuffed the other team in his last spring training start. His command was off. His stuff wasn't, sharp. And he literally just said, you still can't hit it. I'm going to walk forward and not give up any. And when you have dudes like that, it becomes a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I think that word right there, Michael, I think is what this team is going to be. It's going to be a fun team. It's going to be a fun team to cover throughout the year. It's going to be one of those teams where every single day you're going to see something different and learn something different about this team. And you mentioned it. There's going to be, I think, milestone marks for this team. You're going to have the Paul Skeens debut. You're going to have one of those big games from O'Neal Cruz or Brian Reynolds or Key Brian Hayes that really is just going to turn the tide for this team. And a lot of people, I think, also forget to really end it on this, that they have arguably one of the best leaders of a clubhouse of anybody in baseball, and Andrew McCutchen coming back healthy as well. And I've already predicted that he's going to hit his 300th home run in this Miami series facing 4 lefties. So a lot of people forget that Andrew McCutchen now has a real team of guys that he can look around and say, oh yeah, I could take these guys to the postseason and help them get there. Because as I've said from the jump, when Kutch came back last year, one of the biggest things that he was going to help do is help these young guys and help this team look at somebody directly across from them at their locker in the locker room and say, he has made the postseason and done it here. You could add anybody else like Martin Perez, World Series champion, but he hasn't done it in Pittsburgh. Andrew McCutchen has done things in Pittsburgh that a lot of people have not done, which is make the postseason, get there, win a National League MVP, win a wild card game, really be a couple pitches away from an NLCS 11 years ago. And I think that's leaps and bounds the biggest thing that we can look forward to with this team is it's going to be a fun team, Michael. That's really what I just think it's going to be.
Yeah, and I believe it's going to be Andrew's best year since 2017. I said it last year. He was on pace. He played hurt all year. I'm excited to see him in action, playing a little bit more outfield, which will give, Brian Reynolds a blow every now and then. And also, Jack Sawinski may even get some opportunities, DH, Connor Joe as well, and obviously Talese. So it's going to be fun. Yes. I think the best part is bringing on, signing Keller, signing Reynolds. And this will be the second year. Key Bryan's taking more of a leadership role. It actually helps Kutch be Kutch. And he had to take a bigger role than he wanted to last year. I think it was a great learning process for him, but he was a parent at the field and at home. This year, he'll just be a parent at home, and he's going to focus on winning more than anything else at the field. And I think he realizes that. I think the guys realize that, and he's kind of found his place. And having some other veteran guys like a Chapman and a Perez and a Gonzalez that have been around that are, making real money in free agency, that's important for these guys to see. And they all seem to enjoy it here. They band together, and I really believe it's going to be a fun year, and it's going to be, something that we're looking at, I think, in July and saying, dude, we're in this. Like we really got a chance. And even if we're not, it's a team that could, if it gets hot, could run a month, 2 months, 3 months, because that's how talented they are. And I think the predictability is the thing that's really jumped off at me. Is like you can almost look at them and say, well, even worst case scenario, we're still going to be pretty darn good.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree too. And thank you, man, for coming on to this show. It's opening day week. It should be a national holiday. I say it all the time. MLB opening day should be a national holiday. Nobody should have to work on opening day for baseball. For anything you want to say to everybody before we sign off here on Locked On Pirates today?
Dude, MVP is a good term for your handle because you did a great job. I really enjoyed this. Anytime you want me to come back on, let me know. And go listen to Hold My Cutter with me and Greg Brown. Great stories. It's been phenomenal to get to know people that have a tie to Pittsburgh. We've got, I believe, 12 on board, ready to go, that we're going to be dropping over the next couple of weeks. And we're going to continue to do things with really cool guests. So hopefully it's something different. I like coming on with the people that love the Pirates like you, have a passion, and are really good at, this side of it. So it's really fun to be able to do something completely different. And then come on with you and talk ball.
Awesome, man. And I appreciate it again. Thank you so much. By the way, you guys could follow Michael McKenry on Twitter at the Fort McHenry. You can follow me at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates for all of your news, analysis, opinions, and reactions to everything going on in the world of the Pittsburgh Pirates. Always remember, too, the show's on YouTube and your audio platforms, free and available. Never forget that. Folks, have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday evening. I'll see you tomorrow for opening day. But until then, see you on the flip side.